Well. Did Sean Payton make the wrong decision? Did he make the right decision to not go for two at the end of the game and go for the win against the Cincinnati Bengals? This has been the hot topic, man, that I've been hearing on sports radio, all over the local YouTube channels. Shout out to all you guys. And we're going to talk about it because I think that there's been a lot of really bad takes. I think there's been a lot of really good takes. And now that there's been, about 48 hours to settle down, think about the game, evaluate, watch it a couple of times. I think my opinion might have changed a little bit as to if Sean Payton should have gone for two or if he shouldn't have. So stay tuned for that. If it's your first time on the channel, welcome, guys. I appreciate y'all tuning in. If you love Denver sports, specifically revolved around the Broncos and the Avalanche and the Nuggets, well, I think you're gonna love a lot of the content on this channel. So hit that subscribe button; it'll help me out. Like the video and interact with me in the comments, man. I love talking to you guys. There's been a few comments lately that it's almost like somebody that's been writing seems like they're having a stroke or something. I don't know. Hope you guys are doing okay, but I'll interact as much as I can with those that I can actually understand when I read it. All right, guys, the big debate, the big question, the Broncos coming off their heartbreaking, gut wrenching, just terrible loss in an extremely entertaining game against the Bengals. We already know there's so much to break down with the game. I don't even want to make this a 3 hour long video because I easily could. We're just going to talk strictly about the decision to not go for two at the end of regulation. Now, obviously, man, did Sean Payton want to do it? He wanted to do it. I think that the 45-second to 1 minute delay of reviewing the touchdown initially made him really change his mind. And one of the false narratives that I've been hearing, and a lot of people have been hounding it, I don't understand why this is the case, is they're saying, well, Sean Payne didn't want to go for two because he was okay playing for the tie or he was playing for a tie. And guys, that's simply just not true. All he's trying to say is once you get into overtime, there is three possible outcomes for that game. Okay. Because once you're in regulation, there's not really an outcome like you're going to go into overtime to figure that out. Once you get into overtime, there's now three possible results that could have happened with the game. You're either going to lose, you're going to win, or you can finish in a tie. Now, in 99% of the times, the tie is not anything that coaches really think about. But in this particular moment, because a tie technically is like a win for us, given that we would still have clinched the playoff berth, now two of the three possible solutions are a positive for your team. So you play the odds, you play the 66% odds. That's kind of where I was like, all right, in a way that makes sense. Now, obviously, it's still very highly unlikely that the game's going to end in a tie, but it is a factor that you have to think of. And crazily enough, it should have been a tie. Um, but there was a whole lot of mistakes made, most of them by Sean Payton in this game. But it did ultimately come to that. In addition to it, his decision to not go for it didn't directly backfire also because even though the Broncos lost the coin toss, they still got the stop on the first drive and they still got the ball back with just needing a field goal for them to win. So there was that. But so that's why yesterday and the day before, really right after the game, I was thinking to myself, all right, well, I'm okay with Sean Payton's decision, looking back on it in hindsight. When I look at it now and I've really had some time to think about it, I think there's no doubt about it. 100% he should have gone for it for several different reasons. I think it just enacts a crazy amount of confidence in your rookie quarterback, in your offense. On the flip side, you can say, well, it makes him that he's not confident in his defense. That's not necessarily true because it might not have come to the defense getting or needing to get a stop right off of the bat. But it gives you a lot of confidence with your offense of saying, hey, you know what? We're going to go out there and get it. We've got the momentum. We're on the road. Let's put all of our fate in terms of the playoffs on this one play. Because in your back pocket, you always have, hey, if we lose the game like we did, you have it in your back pocket of saying, we could always win it next week at home against Kansas City's backups. But why wait for that? Why not get it now? So worst case scenario, you're in the position that you're in now. Best case scenario, obviously you win. I don't think that the narrative overall really would have been, oh, if Sean Payton went for it and they didn't get it. I don't think Broncos country as a whole, or at least the real fans, I don't think that they would have been like, man, that's a terrible decision. There would have been a lot of people, I think, emotionally, yeah, right off the bat, you're going to be thinking that. But when you really sit back and think, I believe that they would have been like, you know what, it's a hell of a call. I love the confidence that he showed. He's he stayed aggressive to his normal nature. he should have, we can live with the result. We can live with that. Um, but I think he got scared. I think he kind of went with a gut feeling that he kind of in this morning's um, press conference, he kind of said, "Yeah, I definitely thought about that multiple times." And he's been running. He might not have even been slept these last 2 nights because he's probably been thinking about that call in particular. There was so many factors that went into the game. I don't think that decision ultimately is the reason we lost. By no means. But I feel like he should have done it because it shows a confidence in his young quarterback that and the young team, frankly, that I feel like the team really would have responded well to with a win or a loss. In my opinion, there's no doubt about it. But I'm ultimately not surprised. A lot of people, they also talked about, Sean Payton's this guy that kicked the onside kick in the Super Bowl in 2009, and he's always been somebody that's wanting to gamble. Listen, that's not entirely true. He's actually not been the most, a very aggressive coach overall compared to other coaches in general throughout his entire tenure. But this is an entirely different team. That's why I try to tell people, judging Sean Payton as the play caller that he was in New Orleans, you can't judge him on the same way with this because it's a completely different team. And he's got to understand his strengths and his weaknesses, and he got a really good idea of what those were in New Orleans. He had a very talented roster for many of those years, so it opens up the playbook a lot more. Here, it's a little bit more limited in terms of the plays that he might feel confident calling. So, it is what it is. You guys can say, well, he's had 17 games now or 16 games, whatever it ends up being, 16 games with this team. He should have been able to figure it out. Yes, to an extent, for sure, but there's always a lot of moving parts. There's always a lot of times where you think you're calling a great play. It's a play that the offense seems confident in, doesn't work. Other things happen, vice versa. There's a lot of things. There is some undisciplined nature to this team as well. I think that's got to come to as a factor. But ultimately, I think you've got to go for that because there's a lot more to gain than there is to lose in that particular scenario when you think about it. Like I said, even in a loss, I think that you get a lot of confidence from the offense. You get a lot of feel good from that young team of like, hey, we were tasked with the job to go out there and tie the ball game or get that touchdown in the last minute, 20 seconds of that game. They went 70 yards. They did it. And now you live and you breathe by that, right? By them doing it. So I would have been a big proponent of going for it in that particular scenario. Now that I think about it, I just feel like we should have. Like I said, I think that the positives certainly outweighed the negatives. But that's not to say, guys, I don't think that decision was ultimately what led to us losing. No doubt about it. There's a ton of other aspects of the game, of the team that have been a problem that we've talked about a lot on this channel constantly. And they've come back to bite us a lot throughout the season, but we really felt them the most these last two games because I think it ultimately has cost us the game. One last point I want to make on the decision. I think when you're deciding at that particular time of the game, when you're deciding to not go for it, what you're doing is you're ceding control of the game that you ultimately would have had you gone for it. You're in full control of the play call. The players are fully in control of what their job and their assignment is on that particular play. You're ceding that. And that's been the biggest problem with this team. Every time that they've had an opportunity to really take control of the game, to feel like they've got it on lock, these last two games specifically, they have not done it. They've really just either relied on the defense making a game-changing play, or they've just constantly played catch up. And in the situation in the Chargers game, they had some times where they really controlled the game. They had an 11-point lead, and then they failed to fully take the game over, change the narrative, put their foot on the throat of the opponent. In this game, they just constantly were playing catch up, constantly the entire game, all the way until literally the last second. And a lot of that I think has to do with the offense not being able to get into a rhythm, mainly because they are not committing to the run game and not having a consistent enough run game as a whole when it comes to that. The running game is extremely important for two factors. One, because it allows for you to stay ahead of the chains. It allows for you to wear the defense out and really dictate a lot of what you're going to do in the pass game at times. But probably the most underrated factor of it is the time aspect, right? When you look at this last game, okay, you can make the arguments that even the first two drives that the Bengals had that were long drives, 13, 14, 15 play drives. They took 6 to 8 minutes off the clock each time, even though those ultimately resulted in 0 points for them because the defense did a really good job of being, bending but not breaking and being stout. The time that they took off of the game clock, you can argue is actually probably more important than if they got like 6 points, 2 field goals, but took, you know, 30% of the time to take it. Um, the clock factor is something that's not talked about enough in sports, specifically in football. But man, is it unbelievably important. Like I'll tell you guys at the end of a game, let's say I was thinking about the scenario the other day. I want to get you guys' thoughts on it. If you're leading 13-10 going into the fourth quarter, you have the ball, 15 minutes on the clock in the fourth quarter, and you have a drive that takes up 10 minutes and it results in a field goal. That drive is a lot more valuable and a much better drive, in my opinion, than one that results in a touchdown that takes maybe 2 minutes off the clock. It just completely sways everything, because now you essentially, instead of giving a defense maybe or the offense, 3 possessions in that quarter, which is the average, maybe even 4, you're basically saying you might be lucky to get 2 possessions, but you're probably just gonna have to get 1 shot to be able to go down there and get a touchdown. That's a kind of an extreme example, but it's just one of those that shows how important it is to control the clock and the time aspect of it. Broncos haven't been able to do that. The time of possession and their 2 losses have been really, really bad, completely swayed in the favor of the opponent. And it's really been a problem most of the year. But at one point, I think before the Chargers game, our opponents were averaging 31 minutes and 31 and a half minutes of time of possession, which is just slightly over half. So it's not terrible. These last 2 games, it's been very, very bad. Uh, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, and it's a little bit swayed because this one went into overtime, but it's not good. It's not good at all. And I can have you guys go look at it, for yourselves in terms of the importance. It basically takes a lot of drives away from the offense and opportunities for your team to score. That's just simply what it does. In addition to that, when your defense is on the field for drives that consume 6, 8, 10 minutes of game time, that means the offense is going to be on the bench for, 30 to 45 minutes in some cases, like it was in this game, in real life time, just sitting there. And that does weigh on the team, not just being able to not get into a rhythm, but it also puts a lot more pressure now on the opportunities that the offense gets because the amount of chances and snaps that they're going to have for the full game gets limited quite a bit. So that's kind of where I'm at. There's a lot of that. It's something that the Broncos desperately need to fix, not just for this game against Kansas City, obviously. And if we end up winning this game, not just in the playoffs, but certainly for something looking into next season. And I think that part of it is definitely play calling. I think part of it is definitely going to be personnel as well, and a lot of things that we can address. But that discussion is for another time. I appreciate y'all tuning in. I hope you guys found this to be informative. Hope you guys learned something and enjoyed it. Go Broncos, baby. Let's get this win. It's going to be a long week, man. Let's just try to enjoy the new year. Happy New Year to all you guys. I hope that 2024 ends on a high note and 2025 is the best year yet for all of you guys. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Go Broncos. Hopefully, in a week, we'll have another video for you talking about the playoffs and what it means and maybe some ways that we can somehow, some way pull off an upset in that game. But until then, we're gonna have to see what happens. Go Broncos, baby. Spend time with those you love most. Happy New Year, and until next time, guys.